Watchers, welcome back to the channel, and in today's video this is going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel here. I am comparing an Invicta to a Starking. So ever since I reviewed this watch, I kind of promised I'm going to do a closer head-to-head comparison between these two watches. So here it is today. So introducing the watches. On the left corner I have the Invicta Pro Diver 89280B or OB, which I reviewed quite a while back. OB standing for the original bezel. So this one in blue with gold tone PVD and steel, of course, which I do think this is a gorgeous looking watch for what it is, for the homage watch that it is. So this one, Invicta. On the right corner, showing you this particular watch. It's something that looks very, very close in appearance. This is the Starking AM0261, or what I like to call the Starking Pro Diver, the homage, if you will, of the Invicta. One of the viewers commented on that, and I have taken that on. I call this the Invicta homage. So, putting down this aside, we have two dive style watches. I think the Invicta can be considered a proper dive watch. The Starking as well, but they don't kind of go out to say that, but obviously it is a very much dive style type of watch. Homage watches, both have 316L steel for material. They both have screw-in case backs that you can see right there, and screw-in crowns with unidirectional style dive bezels. Relatively poor lume, both of them. How does the established Invicta Pro Diver fare against the relative newcomer Starking? So MSRP wise, the Invicta is $315 USD. The Starking MSRP listing is $180, but realistically, interestingly, the Invicta goes for slightly less, about $70 on Amazon. Starking, this one I couldn't find on Amazon, but realistic sale price on many of the online retailers is $99 USD. So let's work through the 10 categories that I have here and give you the scores. So first one, caliber, I'm not going to mention specifically about because it's exactly the same. They both have the Seiko NH35A. No difference, I think, in terms of finishing and performance. There's no level that Seiko attributes to these particular calibers, you know, like ETA may. So I'm going to give them exactly the same score that you can see there, 7 for both. Now, case and bezel. Okay, so Invicta and Starking, I think they are very, very nearly identical. So if I let you take a look at them, you can see that the proportions, all the measured proportions are identical. So case width 40 millimeter, lug to lug 48 millimeter, case thickness 13.5 millimeters, and even the adjusted weight, meaning after I've removed some links, is the same as 135 grams. So that kind of led me to think that they may have come from the same factory, but in fact, they are not completely identical. If you look at the lug structure, right, you can see there's a little bit more meat on the Starking watch. You know, the one on the right has a little bit more meat. The bezel structure is a little bit different, right? Hopefully you can appreciate that. The PVD gold is not exactly the same, and the actual coin edging is not exactly the same. Hard to capture that, but it's not exactly the same. And definitely the dial isn't the same. So not exactly the same factory, I would think, that they come in. You know, that really tells me there are slight differences. The other thing is, if you look at the crown guards, right, they're not, there's a little bit more squarish on the Invicta, a little bit more rounded on the Starking. So definitely the crown isn't the same, given there's a yellow PVD on the one on the left on the Invicta, whereas that one's just a plain steel crown there. Okay, so very nearly identical, but I have to say the Invicta is marginally better. The bezel feel is slightly better. It's very hard to translate that on camera, but you know, on the in hand, the bezel actually feels tighter. The fit of the bezel is actually slightly better in my opinion. Whereas the Starking, you know, it's a little bit loose, there's a little bit more play. It just doesn't feel as nicely finished as the Invicta. You know, that's really how it feels in hand. Very difficult for me to translate that to you guys on camera. So that's my opinion of this kind of performance wise. All right, so I've given 8 to the Invicta in terms of case and bezel design. I've given 7 to the Starking here. Right, dial and crystal, moving on to the next one. I've given them identical marks here because, look, the designs are stolen, right? No doubt about it. They've been stolen from the Rolex Submariner, right? Everybody knows that, I hope. The Invicta has more classic proportions. Like if you look at the dial, the markers are just slightly more classical, like the smaller original size of the Rolex dial. The Starking has kind of a bolder, brighter appearance. You can see the Invicta, because it's smaller, it's more yellow appearances. Certainly they've used a yellow font on the dial, whereas the Starking, you're getting a lot more white with the lume and as well as white printing. It does have a little bit of a more modernized look, if you will. Neither, I think, is better. They're just different. What I can say is the Starking Cyclops, hopefully you can see that, it just doesn't magnify as much as the Invicta. So I think the Invicta Cyclops performance is actually superior to the Starking. So hopefully that translates there. The 28 date is actually bigger on the Invicta, even though I think the underlying square of the date is actually the same size. Okay, so I've given them the same mark, but I think if anything, the Invicta perhaps is slightly better in terms of the Cyclops there. All right, moving on, bracelet-wise, look, they're the same type of bracelet, right? The same type of clasp, pressed metal. I think the Invicta is just slightly better finished, right? Just there's a little bit more squaring off in the gold tone PBD, a little bit sharper on the edges on the side here. The Starking just doesn't, it's just a bit more rounded, as if it's not quite as sharp. Very difficult for me to translate to camera, but that's how I feel about it. And then the other thing is this friction point is very soft, right? You can almost just pull it apart with your finger, whereas this clasp piece is a little bit too tight. Just a little bit better balance on the Invicta, I think, overall. So I'm going to give the Invicta the higher mark for the bracelet there, 7 versus 6. That's really what I feel about these watches. Next one, quality. So overall quality, I've got to say the Invicta is finished just that much better. Okay, so letting you see the sharpness of the finishing, particularly on the edge of that lug there. Hard to see on the bezel edge there, but definitely I've pointed out the finishing on the bezel, the tightness of the bezel, just the edge finishing on the bracelet there. In comparison to the Starking, I think the Starking just isn't quite as sharp. If you look at that edge on that lug there, just isn't quite as sharp as the Invicta. The finishing, definitely the bracelet finishing is better on the Invicta. This one is wavy and uneven. The Invicta just does it better in hand. That's definitely the case. I have to give the quality overall to the Invicta. So I've chosen to give a mark of 7 versus 6 on the quality stakes here. This is purely on the finishing of the case here. The overall feel, the solidity of the case feels the same to me. All right, style-wise, I'm not going to say too much, right? I think they're essentially identical. Probably I could have put an X there. They both have stolen good looks. It's very hard for me to separate them. I think the Invicta is a little bit more demure with the smaller markings and the gold writing. The Starking is a little bit more bolder and brighter, but I'm not going to say one is better than the other. It's just a matter of preference. I'm going to give 8 for both. Maybe you can minus that because it is a copied look, but that's what I've given for Invicta in the past. And just to note that all the marks I've given before are identical to previous reviews for Invicta. I haven't changed them. Performance-wise, okay, so this one I have to give it to the Invicta again, right? Why? Well, definitely because Invicta is 200 meters versus the Starking 100 meter. The Starking, I think, has marginally better lume in terms of initial burst, but they both don't last through the night. The Invicta definitely has a better bezel feel, definitely has a better performing Cyclops, as well as a better bracelet. I think overall performance, I have to give it to the Invicta here. I don't think that's very controversial at all. So 7 versus 6. Right, next one, guys, durability. Right, they're both pretty solid feeling 316L steel cases. They both weigh the same amount of steel. They're both pretty good, and I'm not going to separate them. I think durability, because they're identical designs, I have to give the same mark here, 7 for both. Next one then. Okay, value. Right, so what are we getting here? We're getting the same movement, we're getting the same type of crystal, we're getting very similar feeling cases. Right, for the price, 99 versus 70, I think no doubt you have to give it to the Invicta, because it does have the better performance. I think the quality of the finishing is better. With the pricing, it is actually a clear winner on the value. No doubt about it in my mind. It's a 2-point separation, 7 versus 9. I think the Starking's not bad for what it's giving for 99 USD for this package. I think the Invicta just wins it overall, however. 9 versus 7 on this category here. Brand-wise, okay, Invicta has its own problems. They're well known, right? They're very well established, particularly in North America. Lots of boutiques on the map that I can see. And, they have their issues, right? Too many models, funny pricing strategies. They have their issues, but I've given 7 in the past and I've stuck with 7. Starking, why am I giving them 7? Despite the fact that they're a new brand? Well, look, I think they are worth keeping an eye on, because despite the fact that they're a newcomer, they do look to be establishing themselves as a true horology manufacturer. They have house movements that are in-house manufactured in some of their pieces, and probably that will increase in the future. I think they're a very strong contender that they're gonna be worth keeping an eye on, because they do slightly put their head and shoulders up above the typical Chinese mushroom brand. So there you go, guys. That's the 10 categories. What's the total? I think that the Invicta is the winner. How much of a winner? Quite significant. Okay, so in summary, guys, 2 good contenders in terms of the battle of the bottom of the barrel, these homage style watches. I think the Starking mounts a serious challenge, right? They've got decent Seiko movement, identical to the Invicta. It's got a brighter, bolder look, and it's a new horology manufacturer, so I think, keep an eye on this brand. But the Invicta continues to hold its own as one of the best sub $100 pieces around, and it still is, and this is such a gorgeous looking piece. It equals or wins in all direct comparisons, and it's outright better in the case and bezel design, as well as the better bracelet. Overall quality finishing is better. Performance, I've given the mark as well, of course, in the value stakes. It is the outright winner. The Invicta Pro Diver takes it in this battle. So guys, let me know what you think about this comparison, and if you have either of these watches, I would be keen to hear what your thoughts are. And guys, if you enjoy my videos, do consider subscribing. New content every week, always aiming to be objective and unbiased in all things horology. Thank you again for sticking with me, and as always, I'll catch you guys next time.